recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Roskam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to point out a couple of the internal inconsistencies that our friends on the other side of the aisle are making. Mr. Cummings made a pledge to pursue the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And Mr. Smith basically said, you're never going to get it. It's impossible. In fact, he said, you're never going to get all the answers. You're never going to get all the documents. That's an internal inconsistency, and they need to work it out. Now, Ms. Sanchez just made an argument that said, well, certain information was would have disposed of a particular question. But had that information been released, they would have made an exact argument that said this is selective leaking of information. And to Mr. Cummings' point, to go back and use just a classic straw man argument, you don't hear that much. And there was really no pretense to it. But the classic straw man argument says this is the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. No, it's not. It's a completely different committee with a completely different chairman and completely different admonition from the House. And really to characterize this as a partisan process that is glacial in nature when the majority has accepted the recommendation of the minority, and that is to have the first two subjects at the request of the minority party, ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So let's get down to really what this is all about. Mr. Rubin, thank you for your time today. I thought it was ironic that you're talking now in terms of the timing of these things, and that's what has everybody concerned, but you're actually speaking seasons of the year. You said, with some happiness, you said, we've produced 2 witnesses since the fall. Isn't that ironic? That you're not speaking in terms of days or weeks or even months, but you're characterizing the timing of the Department of State in terms of seasons of the year. Now, you've come into this with an opinion, haven't you, based on your past writings. You wrote a piece about the politicizing the Benghazi attacks back in October of 2012. Isn't that right? Let me read the first 2 paragraphs, and I just want to get your opinion and how that opinion intersects with today. So you wrote, the killing of 4 American patriots in Benghazi last month was an act of terror. Those 4 Americans, including the U.S. Ambassador Chris Stevens, represented the best of our country. They put their lives on the line to advance American interests in a volatile region. They deserve the support of their government back home. Paragraph 2. Instead of getting that support, their deaths are being used as a partisan attack on President Obama, part of a false narrative that the president failed them. What has failed them is our political system. Rather than supporting a serious, nonpartisan investigation into what took place and what went wrong, waiting to get all the facts out, conservatives are trying to affix blame for their deaths for political advantage. Now, I recognize, Mr. Rubin, there's been a lot of things coming off of Capitol Hill as it relates to Benghazi, but you don't think that this is a frivolous partisan investigation, do you?
Chris Stevens was a friend of mine. I worked on Capitol Hill alongside Chris. And
you don't think
I'm sorry,
Mr. Rubin. Do you think that this is a frivolous partisan investigation?
Sir, I'm not commenting on the question of is this a frivolous partisan investigation, because you're reciting what I wrote in 2012
accepting the responsibility
when I was not in
at the Department of State, and I'm interested in a simple question. Do you think that this investigation is frivolous and partisan? What's your opinion?
Sir, again, in 2012, after Chris Stevens was killed, and I remember the morning because he was a friend, and I remember when his name was announced on the radio, and my heart sunk to my feet because I knew Chris, and he represented the best of the State Department,
is
best
this
of America.
Frivolous?
And I'm sorry, sir, his name at that time was not being used in a manner that I felt respected his memory.
Mr. Rubin, is this frivolous? I'm asking you an opinion about your opinion about this process today. Is this frivolous and is this partisan? What's your answer? Can you not give an answer to that simple question?
Sir, the State Department is and has been, from the Secretary on down, happy to comply with and work with the committee, as the chairman himself has said in a letter as well as in public comment, that
Mr.
we have
Rubin,
been cooperative.
I thought that was an easy layup. I thought it was an easy thing for you to say, no, of course this is serious, and of course this is not partisan, and let's get to it. I find it shocking that you can't give a straight answer to that simple question, and you're not going to give it to me, so let's move on. I find myself oftentimes translating for people. I'll translate back home what is meant by certain language up here. I find it ironic that you work for the State Department and you're in the business of understanding foreign language, and you have misinterpreted the language, the graciousness, and the charm of a Southern chairman. Because to come in here and to sort of claim that you're gratified, that we are pleased with your cooperation, well, let me translate for you. He's not pleased with your cooperation. Think that this is going well, and he thinks that you're part of the problem. Now, you claimed in your original testimony, in this role, I serve as the department's chief liaison to the House, responsible for ensuring that the multitude of foreign policy issues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So your testimony is that you're responsible. Is that right?
My testimony is that I am the chief liaison, that the State Department has a significant number of people working on a significant number of issues. In my job, I convey those issues as requested by Congress and back and forth in the dialogue with the Foreign Affairs Committee.
Mr. Rubin, back in November 18th, a season ago, this committee requested the documents, the emails, the communiques, and so forth of 11 of the principals on the 7th floor. You're familiar with that. Now, I brought my computer here today, and I know it's not the same thing. I don't want to oversimplify it for the sake of being gratuitous, but when I go to my email, which has thousands in it, and I type in something like United Airlines, for example, and I sort it, dozens and dozens of things come up within the twinkling of an eye. When can we expect you to use a similar enterprise? Is there a date certain that we can rely on? Because the admonition that you have never said no is ridiculous. To never say no, you don't have to say no. As a dad, when my kids would come to me and say, they'd ask to do something and I didn't want to do it, I'd say, let me think about it. You're doing the exact same thing. You're saying, we're working on it. Do you remember that scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark at the very end? When Indiana Jones goes in and he's talking to the government guy, and he says, where's the Ark? And the government guy says, we have top people working on it. And Indiana Jones says, what people? The guy says, top people. You're the government guy. You're standing up for top people. You've got to bring your game. You've got to be the expediter. You've got to be the one that sheds your past opinions about congressional investigations and takes on the job of being an advocate so that we can all get to the bottom of this. The other side doesn't get to argue in the alternative, that it's not moving fast enough and they're being passive-aggressive by not participating. It just doesn't work, and it's very flat-footed. But what we need from you is a disposition of expedition. That is, recognizing that a chairman is not happy. Don't misinterpret the charm and graciousness of the South. I'm from Chicago. We have none of that. And we're trying to be very, very direct. And that is to be part of the remedy, Mr. Rubin, to be part of the solution, and to get things done.
As I've said, sir, and as I can assure you, as I said in my testimony, we will begin the production of additional documents to the committee within days. We are also needing the guidance from the committee as to its top priorities and sequencing.
That's arguing it.
The committee had told us its top priorities.
You're making an argument there, Mr. Rubin, that says that these things have to be consecutive requests. They're not consecutive requests. They're concurrent requests. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. Mrs. Roby made the point, you've got 70,000 employees. So to make the admonition of the committee that you've got to line up single file and you're going to be admitted in, and we're going to get you this piece of evidence if you ask the right way, and you're going to give you that piece of evidence, come on. That's an old trick. We're not old people.
We have a record of cooperation with this committee. Even in recent days, we proactively offered a briefing to this committee that was not requested.
Come on. We need the documents.
It was more than a briefing.
On the 7th floor.
It was much more than a briefing.
We need it promptly, and we
are committed to
providing the documents.
My time is expired.
I yield back.
Chair, we go.